Hello, loves. Hope everyone is doing well. I'm Shay with Curate Soul, and this is our May Bhavana vlog. So bhavana, again, is the Sanskrit word that means theme or energetic. So this is the theme or energetic that I am working with through the month of May, not only in my personal practice, but in any sort of public class offering and private clients. For those of you that may be new and joining me, just a little kind of idea about how I come up with the monthly bhavana. This year was a bit different. I decided to do a Wheel of the Year poll using one of my favorite oracle decks, and this time I used the Wild Unknown Animal Spirit deck from Kim Cran's beautiful deck here. And so I pulled a card for each month. And instead of working literally with that animal, especially in yoga asana classes, what I'm doing is using the energetics of that animal, those characteristics, those qualities, to interweave yogic and Ayurvedic themes into my offerings. And so for the month of May, I pulled the Fire Ant. So here's our Fire Ant card. And you see all the little ants in this central kind of fiery coloring of orange and red, and the fire symbol at the top. And so the qualities, the energetics of the fire ant are related to aggression, rigid thinking, and following orders. And so this card is really a reminder to keep that fire element in balance, that in excess, it can be very destructive, but that fire is very much needed. We can also look at this card, especially the idea of ants in general and how they live in community, as the energetic of collaboration, the energetic of community and creating that in our life. And then also the energetic of when we're in community, how fire may be in excess or may be needing to be stoked. And I'll speak to that in just a minute, a little bit deeper. And so again, aggression, rigid thinking, following orders, and community. Again, a remembrance to keep this fire element in balance. As we are coming into the warmer months, coming into late spring and then into summer, we are entering what is called Pitta season, one of the Ayurvedic doshas. Pitta is the combination of the two elements of fire and water, predominantly the fire element. So fire is incredibly important in yoga and Ayurveda. It's an important aspect of life, an important aspect outside of yoga and Ayurveda when we think about life in general, growth. The sun is a huge fireball, and we need that energy of the sun for life to exist. Fire in yoga and Ayurveda is very much related to the element of transformation. It's what allows us to create clarity, to be able to discern, to be able to transform and transition, create change, and to move. It's what keeps us from being stagnant. So this energy of kind of alchemizing whatever is burning into something new. Fire, however, can, because it is so powerful and so strong and very mobile, very hot and sharp, can also quickly become excessive. And when excessive, it can then begin to become destructive instead of alchemizing, instead of beneficial to the change and transformation that we are looking for, that we are needing, that the world needs. And so we have to remember to keep that in balance. In Ayurveda, when we are in a particular season where an element is dominant, hence Pitta season, dominant in fire, we tend, as humans, because we are not separate from nature, to have an excess in that same element or those same elements. So we are naturally becoming a little more fiery this time of year. Our digestion is pretty strong. We tend to be very active in our lives, maybe vacations. We're going through holidays, graduations, maybe into summer break, but summer break is quite often full of fun activities, visiting family, hanging out with friends, barbecues. There's a lot going on. We have more hours and more daylight during the day to do things, so we tend to be a bit more active this time of year. Again, that activity is related to that fire element, and so we have to remember to take breaks, to rest, and to allow ourselves to rejuvenate and kind of cool that fire. So in balance, fire is very disciplined and thoughtful and focused, and kind of the, we can say like the life of the party. When in excess, though, that's where that rigid thinking, that aggression, that anger, those sharp words begin to appear. We can also begin to see that in physical aspects like hot or sharp digestion, things like heartburn, acid reflux, nausea, feeling very hot internally, red patches on our skin, feeling flush. So these can be physical manifestations of too much fire in our bodies and in the mind. And so we, again, want to remember to create balance. And to create balance, what we do is bring in those opposite qualities. So again, one of those opposite qualities is rest, is stillness, because fire is so mobile. It moves very quickly. So balancing that with stillness, however that may be. In the summer, it's a beautiful time to kind of lounge in the shade in a hammock or on the green grass and just begin to kind of let the mind cool, the body slow, and find some rest. You can begin to bring in cooling foods like coconut and cucumber. And these cooling foods aren't necessarily the temperature of cold, because cold can actually dampen our digestion, but the qualities of cold and cool, and again, kind of a lightening, not so heavy. So think about greens. A lot of greens are very cooling. Cilantro, parsley, again, coconuts. So things like coconut water or just chewing pieces of coconut meat. So good. Cucumber is a beautiful one. You can add that to your water, or you can just nibble on some cucumber during the day, especially during the warmer parts of the day. That's really good to have. And so again, let's move back to this reminder of the excess of fire. So this excess is that quality, that force that attracts us to people and situations that feed our imbalance rather than those that can counter them. And so again, this is just that kind of warning with this card that we're coming into this fiery season. We're naturally a little more fiery. So begin to become aware of those moments that feel like they are creating imbalance, that don't feel so nourishing to us, that feel like they maybe create some stress, some tension, maybe even some anger, agitation, resentment, and begin to really assess, get clear on how is this creating nourishment or support for you, or maybe there's something that may need to shift or change. What are the situations that you can control? And that control may be removing yourself from that situation. So stepping back and taking a wider lens view of what exactly is going on. Sometimes when we are very much in the center of something, our focus becomes very tunnel vision. That's that myopic excess fire. And so we need to step back, remove ourselves from the situation for a little bit or permanently, and just reassess, get clear about what our purpose is, what our reasoning for being there in that situation might be, and is it where we want to be, should be, or need to be. And so again, using this awareness to create balance and to reduce any excess of this fire element. So let's also talk about the idea of community and collaboration. So this is more of just the idea of the ant energy, not necessarily the fire ant, though fire ants do work in community and collaboration. If you were a kid who purchased one of those cool little ant heels that you could see it was clear on both sides, and you could see how the ants tunneled through the sand and moved around and worked in community with each other. This card is also a call to remember our community around us. How are we serving our community, and how can we be in community to create support, not just for ourselves, but those around us and the greater good? We can look at that fire ant energy in the community, especially when we are looking at maybe some of the worldly happenings right now, what's going on outside in the world, in the political atmosphere, wherever we kind of maybe land our focus. And we may see a lot of fire. We may see a lot of agitation, a lot of anger, a lot of aggression. And again, that awareness is being called in and needed during this time, so that we can use this support of the community for ourselves, but also use this support of the community to continue to nourish and make progress in the outside world, in the external world. Community can be destructive. Again, when you have a lot of this fire quality, a lot of anger, a lot of aggression, it can actually create more problems than it can create solutions to the problem. So again, this card is a call to just assess where we are, where you are, where your community may be. How are you being supportive to your community? Is the community being supportive to the greater good that you are in? The community that you are in supportive to the greater good. And so just taking time to step back, take a wider lens view, and really make sure that we're keeping this element of transformation and change in balance. We often can have a lot of fire going on and be very passionate about things. And passion is very good. But sometimes, again, that excess passion allows us this, it creates this kind of, again, tunnel vision where we forget to pause and say, hey, is this the best choice? Is this the best option? Is this really going to create the desired outcome that I am hoping for? Is it really supportive to those around me? Is it really supportive to myself as well? And when we can take that time to step back and take that pause, instead of just moving with that passion all the time, we can be more aware of the results of our actions. And so using this time to collaborate with others, to check yourself and to check the community that you're in, but also to celebrate the benefits of working in a partnership, the partnership with others, but also think about the partnership of spirit, the partnership with spirit in your personal practice. What is that partnership like? How is that supportive? What are the benefits to creating that partnership? It's also a reminder to accept help, trusting your most important partnership, which is that partnership with you, your spirit, your inner divine light, and then accepting help from the community as well. I know personally it's quite often difficult for me to accept help from others. I'm very much somebody who wants to do it myself and take care of it myself, but I am learning slowly that it is very important to be able to accept help from others, and that it really creates a sense of community and also creates just also a greater sense of support around myself, less stress, less agitation, less frustration. And that, it's really been a gift, a grace to lean into the support of those around me. And that as a practice, it's something that I try to do. And as you do it more often, it gets a little bit easier over time for sure. So if you find yourself also difficult to accept help, create a practice. Maybe give yourself, once a day, allow yourself to accept help from somebody and see how it becomes a little bit easier over time to accept that support from others. Also remembering to connect with others and having accountability partners. This is a great idea that comes from community, something that we can lean into. This is one of the benefits of a public yoga asana class. It's one reason that I love teaching yoga asana. in a public setting is because it is a container for accountability. A lot of people love to have that accountability of a community class that they can show up to, while others love working more one-on-one and the accountability to their teacher or their coach or their guide is more fitting for them. So remembering that community is also a way to hold yourself accountable, but then you are also a way to hold your community accountable. So I just want to leave you with a few self-inquiry questions and this energy of the fire ant as we move into the rest of May and into Pitta season, and maybe some ideas to contemplate on in your own practice. So do you believe that you have to do everything yourself? And do you believe that any help that you get will be disappointing or not good enough? So maybe take a moment to kind of assess and get really clear on what it feels like to receive help. If you avoid receiving that help, why? Do you feel that it's going to be a disappointment, that it's not worth the effort, or the idea that it's not good enough? Just really get clear on what community and accepting help means to you. If you're feeling separate from community, maybe set a goal to reach out and communicate. And maybe that is community with one person. Maybe it's somebody that you haven't been in touch with for a little bit. It could be a family member, a friend, a previous work partner. Now that many of us have gone to the home front for our office, that community setting of a work environment may no longer be something that we're experiencing on a day-to-day basis. And maybe you had really connected with somebody in the office or your work environment, and you've been thinking about them, but you haven't taken the time to reach out and reconnect. Now is a good time to do that, to remember that connection that you had, that community, and begin to just become aware of if you are now, for example, in a home office as opposed to in a work atmosphere, is that same sense of community there with you and that person or that group of people, or was it just appropriate to that particular location? How is it supporting you? Does it still support you? Or maybe if there has been some space between that connection, maybe that's because it's no longer supportive. So just reassessing that. If you're feeling vulnerable, know that being present in your vulnerability is very important in community. It gives others the permission to be vulnerable as well. And so sometimes if we take the first step, others receive that permission to then allow their vulnerability to show. And in that vulnerability is when a lot of connection is really created, when we really begin to understand this word community, this connection to community, and how we can support others and how others support us. So being vulnerable really helps draw in somebody who wants to assist you. And then again, draws in the community to support you, and maybe some of these this dharma that you're working towards, this greater purpose that you're working towards, finding that community of support. The last thing I'd kind of like to speak to is this concept of tapas, T-A-P-A-S. And if you've been with me for a while, you know that this was one of my bhavanas last year. I can't remember exactly which month, but tapas, which translates as heat. One of my favorite translations is by Nishkala Joy Devi, and she translates tapas as igniting the purifying flame. So again, it's this idea of transformation, this creating challenge or friction purposefully so that we transform, that we shift into a different mindset or a different practice or a different direction in our life. Again, it's what creates this ability to not be stagnant, to move through any sort of stagnation, to break habits, to break patterns that are no longer supporting us. So tapas is that friction, that heat, that purposeful challenge that we create so that we can move forward or move in a different direction than we've been moving. And so tapas can be created in many different ways. Yoga asana, the physical practice of yoga, is a practice of tapas for the physical body. Meditation is tapas for the mind. Pranayama, breath work, is tapas for the subtle body or energetic body. And on a more kind of like daily aspect of tapas, sitting in that boring work meeting and promising yourself that you're going to stay focused. That is a form of tapas. We're creating that challenge to, again, work through breaking habits and patterns. We can create tapas in the most mundane of tasks, being fully present as we clean the kitchen, as we do the laundry, tapas in conversation with a loved one or community. So being fully present for that conversation, not having a response ready. So receiving what they are saying, that instead of almost like active listening, what's more of a passive receiving. So we're kind of leaning back. We're still focused on the person, but we are not ready to interject a comment, a thought, a question of our own. We're not going to interrupt, that we are fully present for that conversation and for that person. So that is that community, that tapas of being there, being present in that moment. And then lastly, I would just like to say, as we focus on creating balance and, living with the positive aspects of fire, bringing in the positive aspects of fire, tapas, and then also creating that balance by bringing in the opposite qualities, things that are cooling, calming, restorative, things like rest, yoga nidra, yin yoga, restorative yoga, tai chi, just a walk outside, things that will balance that excess heat. Just keep coming back to that awareness, how you feel physically, mentally, how your digestion feels as we move especially into late spring and early summer and things begin to really warm up and feel a little more fast-paced. So just paying attention and remembering that this card is a call to remain aware, that we do need that fire, but we are called to keep that fire in balance. All right, so that is our May bhavana, the fire ant, aggression, rigid thinking, following orders, to keep those in balance, that we may be a little more susceptible to that energy right now. And that's okay if we find that arising in us, but to, again, that awareness, sometimes that remembrance to be aware really helps us kind of create that space, that pause, leaning into the pause. And then also the aspect of the community. Collaboration. It may be a time for you to collaborate. It may be a time to reassess the communities or community that you are a part of or that you are helping to uplift. So as always, great to have you here. Thank you for taking the time to watch the May Bhavana vlog. And if you have questions, comments, don't hesitate to reach out, shoot me an email, find me on Instagram, and I'll see you again soon. Thank you so much.